Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that subscribe button, hit the like, it really helps me out. Anyway, I wanted to make a response to a debate I heard on Unrivaled Boxing Talk and News. By the way, check his channel out. The link will be in the comments below, so check out Unrivaled Boxing Talk and News. But the guys were having a debate on Deontay Wilder's power, whether it was overrated, and whether somebody like Anthony Joshua, for example, hits harder than Deontay Wilder. And it got me thinking. It was a really good debate, actually. I highly recommend you guys check out Unrivaled's channel. But yeah, a few interesting topics that were brought up on both sides. And listen, there really is no right and wrong answer to this. Ultimately, we've never been hit by both. We don't really know, right? And I will say this as well before I get into it. In terms of who's a better fighter, I think that answer is obvious. That is Anthony Joshua, but we're talking about the power of both men. Who hits the hardest? A lot of people who were kind of on the Deontay Wilder's power is overrated side of things were kind of bringing up the fact that Anthony Joshua, for example, has actually knocked out more top 10 rated heavyweights than Deontay Wilder. That much is obviously true. But does that necessarily tell us that Anthony Joshua hits harder than Deontay Wilder? No, that just tells us he's fought better competition and he's knocked out better fighters. But it doesn't actually necessarily mean that he hits harder than Wilder in terms of one-punch power. In my opinion, it more than likely tells us that Anthony Joshua is a better fighter than Deontay Wilder. I would say Anthony Joshua is far more offensively gifted than Deontay Wilder. He's just a better fighter all around. But again, it doesn't necessarily prove who's got the harder one-punch power. One of the points of contention was the fact that Deontay hasn't knocked out many top 10 guys. You know, the best guy he fought was Tyson Fury. He couldn't knock him out. And the best guy he knocked out was Luis Ortiz. He's basically knocked out one top 10 fighter. And I think one of the arguments was that obviously Joshua's knocked out more top 10 guys, therefore he hits harder, you know. But in my opinion, you know, this is where I think a bit of boxrec think comes in and we lose track of the intricacies of the actual sport itself. You know, first and foremost, you know, hypothetically you could have two fighters. One fighter has a 100% knockout ratio, the other fighter has an 80% knockout ratio, and let's say hypothetically both of these guys have 20 fights and they fought the exact same level of competition. The guy with a 100% knockout ratio does not necessarily hit harder than the guy with an 80% knockout ratio. We have to consider the skill set of both fighters. Maybe the guy with the 100% knockout ratio has a two-handed attack. He can throw a more variety of punches, he throws more volume, and hence why he gets more knockouts. But maybe the guy with an 80% knockout ratio, maybe he's only got one shot and he needs that shot to land in order to knock somebody out. So while he's got less chance to knock somebody out because he's got less tools, potentially that one tool or that one punch is still a harder punch than anything the guy with a 100% knockout ratio has. That can still be the case. You know, we have to consider skill sets when we talk about these things. It's all well and good, you know, reading stats and things like that, and they obviously play a part, but at the same time as boxing channels who discuss fights and fighters, we also need to discuss the technical side of things and how these fighters score these knockouts and what tools they have to do so, right? The actual skill set they bring to the table. That does play a big factor. I'll give my own example, and bear in mind, this is a very low level. I've never had a pro fight, I've never had an amateur fight. All I've done is many rounds of sparring. That's my experience in boxing. I was supposed to go amateur at one point, but I was too lazy back in the day, you know. But the less I said about that, the better. But anyway, when I used to spar, there were obviously the regular dudes in the gym. And I'll give you two examples of two sparring sessions I had. The first sparring session was against a guy who was actually of a similar height to me. I'm 6'1", I'm a tall, rangy dude. He was a similar height to me, and he actually fought in a similar style to me. Very standoffish, upright, long punches, straight punches, and he'd try and bide his time to land that one big right hand. That was my style as well. And I sparred him, you know, kind of an uneventful spar. Not much really happened. You know, very few punches landed, you know, jabs here and there, couple of right hands. That was really all that happened in that spar. But when he caught me, his power was it was very hard. His punches were very, very hard. You know, single punch power was very hard. And another guy I sparred was a smaller guy, a come forward guy, you know, bob and weave. He'll get under my punches, he'll work the body, come upstairs. You know, he was that stereotypical aggressive fighter. And when I sparred him, I remember sparring him one day, and I had a terrible, terrible session. He got under my punches, he pushed me back, he worked my body, he worked me upstairs. And if that was an amateur fight, it would have probably been stopped. But yeah, that guy would have stopped me, but the guy I sparred previously, who hit me with a couple of shots, his power was still more real. He still hit harder. But the guy who would have stopped me in an amateur fight, he just overwhelmed me with sheer volume. It wasn't the power or anything like that. It was just the sheer volume. But, you know, if these were amateur fights, one guy would have stopped me and one guy wouldn't have. But the guy who wouldn't have, from my experience, firsthand, clearly hit harder. I'm talking about in terms of pure one-punch power. But the guy who beat me up didn't hit as hard, but he was clearly a better offensive fighter. And that's the thing, when people talk about stoppages and power, they get that confused. It's also about what skill set you bring to the table. Can you punch with both hands? Can you throw combinations? Do you have hand speed? Do you change levels from body to head? You know, there's a lot that goes into getting a stoppage. It's not just one punch power, that's it. There's a lot that goes into getting a stoppage. I think Joshua is a far more offensive fighter than Deontay Wilder. A better combination puncher, you know, a better mid-range fighter, better inside fighter, better finisher. Joshua is a far more accomplished inside fighter than Deontay Wilder. I've got no doubt about that. But the debate was who hits harder in terms of one-punch power. And listen, there's no right or wrong answer to it ultimately, but I would hazard a guess and say Deontay Wilder hits harder than Anthony Joshua. And there are people out there who have collaborated that. You know, Dominic Breazeale, for example, he said that Deontay clearly hit harder than Anthony Joshua. He obviously fought both guys. Eric Molina, another one, he said Deontay hit harder. Lenroy Thomas, a sparring partner of both, said Deontay Wilder hit harder. Richard Towers, again, another sparring partner of both, he said Wilder hit harder. You know, there are people out there who do agree with the theory that Wilder hits harder. But of course, on the flip side, you've got someone like Jason Gavin. He says Wilder hits harder. So listen, they are comparable in terms of punching power. But I think if one guy lands clean, I do think Wilder's power is a little more devastating than Anthony Joshua's. But that is just my opinion, you know. Ultimately, I've not been hit by both, so I don't know. And the best way to really do it would be scientifically with one of those, one of those sort of high-level, high-tech punch machines which can measure power and the force that power was generated at. Until we get that, we'll never really know. But listen, just my opinion, I think Wilder probably hits harder than Joshua if they both throw their best punch, which is the right hand for both guys. But again, just my opinion. But I do say this, I do think sometimes people get kind of wrapped up in what I call box rec think. And don't get me wrong, facts and stats matter, but also, you know, we need to look at the intricacies of the sport. And maybe it's people need to actually go down to the gym to experience it firsthand. It gives you a different perspective on boxing. And I've not even had a competitive fight, but I certainly think experiencing boxing and trying it out yourself, it obviously gives you a different viewpoint on boxing and on fights. You know, it gives you more of an intimate understanding of the sport, I guess. And that's really where I'm coming from, just personal experience with punching power. But yeah, there we go. I mean, if the debate is who's knocked out more top 10 guys, that's Anthony Joshua. But that doesn't necessarily mean Anthony Joshua hits harder than Deontay Wilder. But there we go. That is just my 2 cents on the situation. Again, check out Unrivaled Boxing Talk and News. Great channel. Really good content. I highly recommend it. And also, while you're here, if you could smash the like on this video, and also if you're new, hit the subscribe button, and also smash that like. But yeah, I am pretty much done here. If you guys, by the way, have any video ideas that you guys want to see, feel free to share your suggestions in the comments below. It would be much appreciated. I'll definitely check them out. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. So again, smash the like, hit the subscribe button. I'm out of here. Peace.